Okay, I think we are live. Today we're going to be talking about some pretty crazy things. Just unbelievable, actually. Can you type a 1 if you can hear me okay? Because a lot of people were asking, because I think some people are watching this on their TVs, which I didn't know so many people watch me on their TV, to change the audio. So I've set up a new audio rig here so that you should be able to hear me no matter where I am. Okay, good, we're getting some 1s, that's perfect. I think this is the most I've ever had at the start of a live stream. Thank you for that, Mr. Shovel, that donation just there, really appreciate it. So yeah, this is the most I've ever had at the start of a live stream, so this is pretty wild. But we're going to talk today, and I've got my laptop open here as well. We're going to go through some wild things. I was hoping to do the weekly walk and talk, but getting back so late and then having jet lag, I've got everything here. So we're going to just talk through it, and we'll be back to the walk and talk next week then. So looking forward to it, and we're back in the studio as well from this week. So let's just get started with the first thing to go over here then. And this article that I was reading yesterday is called Bidenomics. National debt, $500 billion in just 20 days. I really had to check this out because a lot of people were telling me about this and messaging me and saying that the US national debt, and this isn't the only wild thing we're going to talk about, by the way, there's 2 or 3 crazy things you need to know about, had just gone up by $500 billion in 20 days. And I when I get these messages sometimes, I just say that, people are just trying to get me to talk about something that doesn't exist. So as soon as I went through this, I was absolutely amazed that the US debt has just gone up past $33.5 trillion, and this was done within 20 days. Now, there's only certain reasons you would do something this crazy. They were adding $28.5 billion per day. And if you think about the amount of GDP the US has, huge GDP, but the key thing is with a lot of this stuff is around the tax revenue that's paid by US citizens to actually, so the government then can take that tax revenue and pay off the debt. Well, if you think about the level that this is going at the moment, soon enough we're going to hit such a high level of taxes coming in, paying off the interest of the debt, which is, remember, the debt is paid to the US Federal Reserve, a private institution owned by private shareholders. It's not owned by the government, as people seem to keep putting in the comments in the chat and saying, no, Neil, the Fed is a government institution. It is not. The Federal Reserve is a private bank. As staggering as that sounds, and I know some of you will have to go and do the research on that because you won't believe it the first time you hear it, the Federal Reserve is a private bank. It's owned by shareholders. No one really knows exactly who the shareholders are, except people at the Fed, or if you are a shareholder. But I've got a pretty good idea of who some of them are. And I think some of them are private banks. I think some of them are big banks. Now, we had this statement come out. Relative to the US GDP of $25.46 trillion, the current debt would require a 33.5% growth in the economy just to cover what has been added. Each US citizen now owe almost $100,000, so not taxpayer but citizen, owes $100,000. So this means if you've just had a baby, your baby has been born into this serfdom of this $100,000 that they owe in terms of the this new debt. And if you're a taxpayer, which most of you will be, you owe $258,000. Now, of course, I'm talking about the US here, but this same thing applies throughout different countries around the world as well. And I pulled this statistic out for you because I thought it was staggering. So I wanted to know how long it took to raise $500 billion, right? Because they've just done it in 20 days. They created it out of thin air in 20 days. It took the US from the founding of the Republic all the way up to 1975. to get up to 500 billion. And then they just did it in 20 days, or should I say it was actually 18 days if you don't count the weekend. And this gets a lot worse. The government's spending patterns are alarming. In fiscal 2023 alone, the interest payments on the debt exceeded $630 billion. $630 billion. So this surpassed the defense spending costs for July. So I think it's pretty obvious. You don't need to watch my private community macro video that I do every month to actually tell you what is going on here. This is not sustainable. This is completely unsustainable. There's just no possible way that this is going to work. And I think we've really passed that point of no return now, that it's gone too far to turn around. So I think it's only a matter of time until we just see this massive collapse, which we all know it's coming. We've been talking about it for years. I know you've been dropping it in the comments for years. This collapse is going to be biblical in nature. It really is. It's going to be absolutely staggering. And I mentioned I just got back from the US. That's why I've got jet lag. I probably look tired. And I was talking to a lot of people out there, and they were saying, what do you mean, Neil? What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? That's usually, this is the line that comes out. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? And I think I explained it quite well in that when you live somewhere or you are doing something daily, because it's incremental, you don't notice the change. So one place that I went to, for example, was Dallas. And Dallas, Texas was a very interesting place. A lot of people said, oh, it's a wonderful city. It is the safest, cleanest, large city in America. You know, I had another person telling me this is the best city in America and all of this. I do what I always do, and I walk around. And people say, no, you can't walk around. You'll get shanked or something. You'll get robbed or whatever they were telling me. It's like, well, how can it be a safe city if I can't even walk around? That was one of the things. And if you live in Dallas, I took the wrong turn. I walked past the bus station there, so you're probably laughing because you know what is by the bus station. And yes, that was a crazy experience with the groups, shall we say, there. So it's not sort of tangent here. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but for me, seeing it from a few years ago, seeing it again today, it was completely different. I can see this slow motion train wreck that's going on. I can see the increased crime. I can see the tragic increase in homelessness that a lot of people can't seem to see. They say, oh yeah, there's a little more homelessness now. A little. For me, it was sort of a 10x experience, and same with the crime, some of the things that I was seeing, and also in other places that I visited. Now, another thing that we've just seen is that the US, Biden, is committing, and he's using very strong language. He's saying that he's committing to fighting this new war, right? And that, siding with Israel and committed to this new war, and that all resources available will be at the disposal. And you've got to ask, and you look at that language and say, what exactly does that mean? All resources will be at the disposal. Well, they said there was similar language used. I was using some AI to find patterns, actually. I'm starting to use a little bit more AI. It's quite interesting, really, what it can find. And the last time this pattern was used was Afghanistan. And before that was around 2002, 2003, and that was Iraq. And the Iraq invasion cost over $3 trillion. The Afghanistan invasion cost over $2 trillion. So that's the sort of spending that we're talking about here. And I should have pulled in the Ukraine spending so far, actually. I haven't got that data, but I know it's significant, actually. So what they're talking about now is about fighting another war on another front. So not just all the Middle East and all the conflict there. Again, many people say there's no US troops aren't in the Middle East, Neil. They're not in these conflicts. They are, you just aren't aware of it. US troops there's bases all around the world at huge expense. It's just that the average person isn't aware of these expenses or the defense budget, which is mind-blowing. So they're now talking about fighting this new war in the Middle East, which basically means bombing campaign. It will just be a massive bombing campaign. You'll see a lot of civilians dying as usual, but it's sad, it's tragic really. Just got to keep everyone in our prayers, in terms of civilians, women, children. It's really tragic. Now, another thing they've talked about is that they might have to pull some of the funding from Ukraine. Obviously, Zelensky is not happy. He's asking for all these meetings and he wants to make sure the funding is maintained. But how on earth, this is what I was thinking, how on earth can the US say they're going to be funding all these new wars when they can't even fund healthcare, they can't fund homelessness, they can't fund a lot of this other stuff. It's staggering, actually. I've just noticed we've got the most people, I think, ever on a live stream right now. So over 3,000 people on this stream. Next thing I want to go on to then is an alarming one for you. And this is around, and this doesn't matter where you live in the world, this is around what's just happened with US bonds. The bond bear market is historically significant because we've just had a 25% drawdown. And if you've seen any of my lessons on the bond market, you'll understand why this is so crucial. The bond market really signifies where things are going in the economy. And you usually have a massive recession. I'm sorry, I'm smiling because I've got the light on in the house, so the birds come down and they know I'm back, and they come and they peck at my window and all sorts here, so I'm trying to shoo them away. No, random ones, sorry. So this is the most significant bond bear market in recorded history that we're going through right now. In history, and this is spanning over 236 years. So what does this mean? It's not just going to be a severe recession. I really do think that we're going to go into a depression, and depressions don't happen that often in modern times. And I've heard economists talk about, oh, they only happen every 100 years, every 200 years, etc. That's not true. If you look historically before Keynesians and modern MMT, modern monetary theory, etc. These used to happen quite regularly. You would have depressions quite regularly. And this is the way the bond market is actually pointing. And there's a lot more metrics. I did that video on 10 metrics or whatever that points towards a depression. You can watch that on the channel. A couple of other lines I pulled out from this. Rising interest rates, central banks like the Federal Reserve are scaling back the bond purchases. Bond prices are falling, they're pushing the yields on bonds higher, and this could severely threaten economic stability. And I remember, not to go too much into this, but I remember warning people about bonds. And I remember people would comment on this and think I was absolutely crazy when I said about the bond market. And when I said I would not be purchasing bonds right now, be very careful, you need to watch the yield curve and see where it's going, because it was looking as though it was going to become inverted. And I remember people thought I was nuts for saying things like this, but it's only because I had a feeling around where interest rates were going, and all these commentators said interest rates would never go to where they are today. I was confident they would, and you will remember me talking about this a long time ago. And now we're there, and I think these experts are wrong again, who are talking about these interest rates coming down, the Fed has to cut. I wouldn't be so sure about that. I think they may not cut for a while yet, because we're now seeing higher oil prices, which I want to come on to as well, and also metal prices, gold and silver. But yeah, I pulled out an image here. I don't think you'll be able to see this, but I pulled out an image of the bond market at the moment, and this is the greatest issue we've ever seen. Peak to trough so far, if you think about it, started on the 31st of July 2020. Peak to trough performance, 25% drop. 25% drop in the bond market. You've never seen numbers like this. You know, it's typically around 13 to 14%, and that's severe. So to see 25%, and we haven't seen any recovery yet. A lot of the others, it shows recovery. You can see all the recovery here. We haven't seen any recovery. It's still at 0%. And this is what I think a lot of people are missing. A lot of these experts, they're completely missing this. They really are. CPI. Yeah, let's talk about CPI actually in September as well. So the Consumer Price Index rose by 0.4% monthly and 3.7% annually. And again, this was above the estimates. They said it wouldn't rise that much. I think they're misunderstanding and they are misforecasting this energy price that's about to hit as well. The Fed claims that their next steps are still unclear and uncertain. They've made no decisions on interest rates. They don't know what they're going to do. Of course they know what they're going to do. They just have to say this to all of us. I don't think they're going to be dropping rates. And in fact, let's talk about WTI as well. So whenever you see WTI, this stands for West Texas Intermediate. And that's at $88. We'll just round up or down here. $88. Brent's at $91 per barrel. Do you realize how significant that is? All of this energy flows into the economy. And this is why we're seeing a lot of problems with certain economies. So both of these oils are up 6% almost on the day. 6% in one single day. And actually most commodities, if you follow commodities, most commodities are up today. Some of them are up 5%, some of them are up 0.5%. There's only a couple that are down. I think natural gas was down by a few percent, but everything is up today. Gold, $1,933 per ounce as of the time of recording, up 5.5% on the week. Silver is at $22.72, also up 5.5% on the week. So I know a lot of you have watched my gold and silver playlist. It's on the channel. You can watch that where I go into why I own a huge amount of gold and silver, because I know where this is going. Once we go into a recession, that's when we're going to see some serious price movements in these metals. Okay, next we'll move on to the IMF, International Monetary Fund, or as I call it, the International Mafia Fund. And they've just had a severe hit, severe hit. So two things quite big and breaking have happened this week with the IMF. They have revised global inflation prediction to 5.8% for the upcoming year. And a lot of this is around oil, I think. They haven't given a reason why. They're blaming it on Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine and now this new brutal invasion. You know, they're blaming it on all these things. But actually, there's a lot more that goes into it than just military conflict, a huge amount more. So they've emphasized the necessity for all, with caps, all central banks to maintain strict policies. So what they're talking about is not going crazy with currency creation. Obviously, the Federal Reserve didn't get this memo because they've just created $500 billion in 18 days. I mean, it's as if we are living in the twilight zone. I think you probably understand that as well. It really is like we're living in the twilight zone. And they've decreased as well their economic growth forecast for 2024 and 2025. Now, a thing that made me laugh, actually, because I'm not a fan of the IMF, is that they are absolutely furious at the moment because China, you won't believe this, China has just swept in and stolen a debt deal that the IMF were doing with Sri Lanka. Yeah, I'm not making this up. You can look this up. The IMF had been spending all this time getting this debt deal ready to basically give a loan to Sri Lanka with a lot of interest, obviously, on top. And China swept in and basically said, hey, don't go to the IMF. We'll give you the debt. We will give you the loan at a much better rate. And we'll do, you know, the Belt and, you know, everything else initiative, Belt and Road initiative. We're going to build you infrastructure. We're going to do all this stuff. So Sri Lanka went, great. And remember, it was Sri Lanka that was the test case for the WEF. They were the ones that did all the organic farming and all that, and it basically crippled their economy. Wow, we're up to a new record, 4,000 people on the stream here. It's just incredible. So the IMF heads are said to be furious about China undercutting their deal. And some of the statements they make are hilarious. So they act as though they're a charity. We were just trying to help the IMF. You know, they act like they're a charity. We're here to help people, all these countries in distress. We're here to help and serve. No, you're not. You're a loan shark. That is what the IMF is. It's a giant loan shark that take advantage of smaller countries. It's staggering. It's baffling, actually. And China, okay. So the agreement remains undisclosed. They don't want to give the information. But China comprises 52% of Sri Lanka's bilateral debt. So another thing is, this is really showing China. I think they probably did a good deal. It's like, let's say you're a new company. For any of you who have worked in companies, what do you do sometimes? You do deals, don't you? You might say, oh, hey, rather than doing this for you, we're going to do it at a really low rate because we haven't really got any clients at the moment. So we need to get some testimonials, we need to get it out there, let people know. And I think that's what China's done here by undercutting the IMF. And they are annoyed. I was going to use a different word there. They are really, really annoyed. And I think this will set a precedent. So a lot more countries or even the BRICS nations or the BRICS Bank will start to do this as well. They'll start to pump money into other countries, undercutting the IMF further. OPEC's just done their world outlook as well, so it's a good report to actually read. And they've said that the oil industry, this is really crucial, and I found this the most interesting one, needs $14 trillion of investment by 2045. Now, it seems a long way away, 2045. Do I really need to worry about this? Well, if that's too far away for you to think about this. It needs $610 billion per year. Actually, let's look at it a different way. Let's look at it as 480 billion, or call it 500 billion per year that's being invested. And they're claiming that the investment is being restricted and stopped at the moment. And they're claiming this is an absolutely huge, huge problem. The OPEC Secretary General emphasized that calls to stop investments in new oil projects could lead to energy and economic chaos. And remember, these sort of execs, they don't like using words like chaos and collapse and things like that. They don't like to use these sort of words. So for him to use him, I'll assume it's a him, for them to assume and make a statement like that is quite severe. Western leaders, it states, have been repeatedly warned about the dangers to their energy supplies, so for the citizens, if they continue to stop the funding into the oil and gas sector investments. But even worse, blocking loans or potentially debanking these energy giants could lead to all-out collapse in the West. Just think about what I just said there again. Debanking these energy giants and blocking their financing. What sort of a moron would do that? I just can't believe what I'm reading here. You would have to do, that's another level of stupid. You've got to be pretty dumb to block your own energy supplies to your citizen, which would ruin your GDP. That's like, imagine I went and put a lock on my refrigerator right now and said, no, I don't need energy, I don't need food, I'm just going to magic it out of thin. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It is so stupid, it's unbelievable. Finland then, this one, talk about irony, you're going to love this one. Finland's gas pipeline was sabotaged. Now, remember when this happened to another well-known pipeline? What happened? Oh, absolutely nothing. There was investigations. No one else was allowed to do their own investigations. Oh no, it had to be this very select team. yes, that did this investigation. And it was the biggest climate catastrophe in history, apparently. I mean, I don't know, I didn't do the numbers, but this is what some of these climate organizations said. It was the biggest climate catastrophe in history because of the amount of methane and everything else that was released. And no one was interested in investigating and finding out what happened. I wonder why. I just can't imagine why that was. But no, this one, a smaller pipeline, the Baltic Connector gas pipeline, spanning 77 kilometers, was shut down due to the concerns of this gas leak, which they found out was sabotage. The repair could take months, and the sabotage required specialist knowledge in order to do it. The pipeline shutdown raised European gas prices, the highest in 6 months for the benchmark Dutch contract. Despite the disruption, the gas supply remains stable, but the cost might increase during this winter. Of course it will. Of course the gas prices are going to increase this winter. I mean, I'm so shocked by this. The pipeline's primary purpose since December 2019 inauguration was to provide Finland and the Baltic nations with increased supply flexibility, minimizing the dependence on Russian gas. Now that's very interesting. I've never noticed the date of that before. December 2019. When did the conflict actually begin? Interesting, that is. NATO claims that these guys are furious if you've been watching this. NATO claims that all resources possible will be used to find out who sabotaged the pipeline, and there will be dire consequences. So this little pipeline is, it's a huge deal, dire consequences. All NATO resources are going to be thrown at this. But yet when the big pipeline blew up, it was, crickets. It's just tumbleweeds. A small investigation team, which, did they ever publish that finding, by the way? I don't know. If they did, it was not in the media. All right, let's end then with, we always have to end the walk and talk with a bit of a weird one, don't we? Animal contraceptive and antibiotics detected in most fast food throughout the USA. Traces were found in 8 of America's top 10 fast food chains, but the FDA doesn't seem to think it's a big deal. Really? You should look at what some of these compounds, I think they call them, were. It's pretty serious, severe. So they went to McDonald's, Starbucks, Subway, Chick-fil-A, Burger King, Taco Bell, Chipotle, Dunkin's, Wendy's, and Domino's. So they went around all of them. I'm cutting a long story short here. The only ones were Chipotle and Subway that did not test positive. All the others tested positive. And that's quite interesting because, wow, we're up to 4,500 on the stream now. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But that's interesting because on my trip, I went to 2 fast food outlets. One was In-N-Out Burger because I've always gone to In-N-Out Burger. I've always loved In-N-Out Burger. And I did go there. I had a cheeky burger and fries for the first time in a long time. And it was good. I had no issues at all. Nice. It tasted nice. Bit of a cheat meal from my clean diet. But then I went to another one. I can't remember what it was. I think it was pizza. It was like a pizza thing. It was Pizza Hut or Domino's or whatever it was. I tell you, I was sick for about a day and a half afterwards. I was so sick. And I don't know what it was. And I had all these weird dreams, like nightmares, like vivid nightmares and dreams. And I'm pretty sure they've got some chemicals in this food and just pure salt. And I felt all bloated. And everything afterwards. So that was my mistake. I shouldn't have had the second cheat meal. Should have kept it clean. But there we go. I hope you enjoyed the stream today. And I think we'll wrap it up in a second. I did have some stuff on my laptop. Completely forgot to show you these things, but not to worry. We'll get to those another time. All right, enjoy, and I'll see you this week. Bye for now.